exchange rates. So let's take a look at what an exchange rate is. An exchange rate is defined as the price of one currency when compared to another. So let's look at our example I've got on the screen. It's how many euros you get for every single pound that you've got. So let's take it and use it now with some numbers. So in my example there, the exchange rate at the moment is £1 is equivalent to €1.50. So for every £1 I've got, I should get 1.5 euros. So let's put some numbers into it. I've got £100 and I'm going to get 150 euros. Could have done 100 multiplied by the 1.50 because that's what I get for every single euro, and I'll get 150 euros. And hopefully that makes sense how I've done that. Really simple maths to calculate. Let's try and do it the other way, looking at the backwards form, trying to convert it. So, for example, I've got 80 euros and I want to turn it into pounds. So what I need to do now is I need to divide it. So I've got 80 euros and I know that 1.5 euros is the same as every pound, so 80 divided by the 1.5 gives me 53.33 pounds and pence. So £53 and 33 pence. And that's how I convert it backwards. Again, nothing too hard and too complex there. Fairly straightforward maths. And all I've done there is converted my currency from one to another, carrying out an exchange rate. Now, exchange rates don't remain constant. They can change by the day, the minute, the second, just depending on who is buying and who is selling their currency at that period of time. And it's all linked to the supply and demand of currency. Now, as you can see on that graph that I've put on the right-hand side of the screen there, you can see the Great British Pound compared to the Euro, and it shows you the strength of the currency, and as you can see, it's slowly depreciated, and then it's starting to slowly appreciate again towards the recent period on that graph. But what you see in there is, you're seeing an example of how supply and demand can affect the value of a currency, and the value of the pound compared to the Euro. So let's have a look at what we mean by supply and demand to take it into that next level. Let's look at supply and demand in a more general form before we apply it to our currency. So if demand for an item increases, yet supply remains the same or falls, then the price of this item will start to increase. If you think logically about this, this is because more people are demanding the product, but there isn't the same amount of supply there, so they're going to pay a little bit more to get their hands on it. Whereas if demand for an item increases, yet supply increases by the same amount, then the price should remain the same. And also, if we were to increase supply, but demand was to remain the same, then we should see the price fall. And if you think about it, that's exactly what we do when we print money, what is called quantitative easing. When we print more money, we increase the supply of the money, or the currency, in the global economic markets, and because of that, and if demand stays the same, we manage to devalue our currency. And that's all due to supply and demand. So if you think about that there, we can apply this concept straight away to our currency. But of course, you're probably thinking now, who actually buys currency? Who demands currency? Well, let's have a look at that. It's not only people like you and me who actually demand currency when we're going on holiday. There are organisations who will demand to buy and sell currency, especially if they trade overseas, so international organisations, because they may trade in a country where they have a different currency to the one which they operate in with their core market. And then you get the massive demands from currency who come from what they call overseas investors. And these are people who make money out of speculating on the money markets and the currency markets. It's a bit like buying and selling shares, only buying and selling currency. And they purchase currency as a form of investment. So I'm guessing you're probably thinking, what do I mean by that? Because that's fairly hard to get your head around how it works. So let's have a look at it in a more simple diagram and how this impacts on our exchange rate. So when the Bank of England increases their interest rate, this obviously is going to make saving more attractive, so people want to save. Now, overseas investors are always looking to get the best return on the money they've got. So what they will probably do at this point here is, if we increase our interest rate, let's say for example to 3%, but the European Central Bank's got an interest rate of 1%, they will take their money out of the euro, so they will sell their euros, and they will try and buy some pounds. Now, because lots and lots of investors all of a sudden start trying to buy some pounds, this increases the level of demand. Now, remember, if the supply of the currency stays the same, but demand increases, then this means it's going to push up the price of our currency, and this makes our pounds worth more money. And at the same time, it'll also, if they're all European users, so they've all got euros, they all start selling, they increase the supply of euros into the market, so they actually weaken the value of the euro. So it's like a double whammy. The pound appreciates against the euro because of the increased demand, but the euro also depreciates against the pound because of the increased supply. Hopefully that makes some sense. I know that is quite complex to get your head around. However, it is exactly how it works, and it's fairly straightforward when you break it down to smaller steps. So what does it all mean? When you get a stronger currency, it means you get more foreign currency for each pound you've got. So when the pound actually appreciates, or the currency appreciates and gets stronger, it makes imports appear more attractive and cheaper. Let's look at the example below that I've done on the screen, and I'll show you how it works. So if we're buying mobile phone cases from America for $1 each, and if in the first example, £1 is equivalent to $1.2, that means that we're paying 83 pence for each phone case. However, our pound now appreciates against the dollar, our currency gets stronger. As a result of this, we're still paying $1 for our phone cases, but now £1 is equivalent to $1.50 or 1.5. Now, what we're going to do now is we do the maths now. It works out that we only pay 66p for each phone case. So look at the difference. By a small appreciation in the strength of our currency, we're actually managing to reduce our unit cost. So as an importer, that's fantastic. However, there's always going to be a downside. A stronger currency is good for importers, but it's not good for exporters. Exporters don't like a strong currency. And this is because it makes exports appear less attractive and expensive compared to overseas competition in the domestic markets. And let's take a look at this using our phone case again. If we typically sold our phone case for £1 and we were trying to sell them back to America, in the first example where we got a weaker currency, when the Americans try and buy our phone cases, at the moment £1 is equivalent to $1.2. So they need to spend $1.20 to buy each phone case. However, as soon as our currency appreciates and it goes to £1 is equivalent to $1.5, they need to spend $1.5 to buy every phone case. This makes it $0.3 more expensive to buy every single phone case. Now that may mean that they will start to look at their own domestic market into America and buy those phone cases where they're cheaper. Maybe somebody in America can make them for $1.3, for example. So you're not going to buy them from the UK when you can buy them from your own domestic market and it'll be cheaper. And this is where we get the little rule. Importers like a stronger currency, exporters like a weaker currency. Now how can you weaken your currency? So it's all done by the Bank of England, and they're all trying to increase the supply of money in the economy. And it typically is done through the idea of reducing interest rates. So if the Bank of England reduces its interest rates, it will hopefully force the investors who buy currency to sell their currency. That then increases the supply of currency in the market, and it reduces demand for the currency. And as a result, the value of the currency should start to fall. And what that will do then is it means that imports become more expensive and exports become cheaper. Now, in an economy, that's seen as quite positive in some aspects, because exports is bringing money into your economy, whereas imports are sending money out of your economy and your flow of income. However, there is also the knock-on effect that when you start to devalue your currency, you then start to devalue your economy in many people's eyes. So it's a very fine balancing line that the Bank of England has to take here as well. They do have another option, which is called quantitative easing, where they can print more money. However, printing more money is seen as a way of increasing inflation and just devaluing your own currency. So this is why it's feared and not used as a common strategy, whereas the reducing of interest rates is used as a common strategy because it's fairly straightforward and simple to use and operate and has a great effect. Now if you're thinking how to remember all this, well, just remember this word spiced. And what it means is stronger pound, imports cheaper, exports dearer. And all it's saying is if the pound is strong, importers like it because imports are cheaper, and if the pound is strong, then exporters don't like it because and the exports become dearer. And remember, the exact opposite is the case for a weaker pound. And that's how it all works. Now, let's be honest about this. Some organisations do not leave this a chance, because this is business. They take part in something called hedging. Now, hedging is a nice, fancy economic term which is all about limiting the risk of fluctuating exchange rates. Importers typically do this. Importers will tend to try and buy currency when it's strong. That can be months or years ahead. And what they're doing when they're hedging is they're trying to buy the currency at its strongest point so they get the best value. Then they keep that currency. And then they can keep using that currency to buy their items from overseas to the periods when the currency starts to weaken. And then as soon as hopefully it starts to grow again, they can start buying their currency again. And it's all about maintaining their fine profit margins. There are many companies who adopt hedging based on the fact that this can enable you to make 3 or 4% more on every item you sell, and that can be the difference between making a good profit margin and making a poor profit margin. Hedging, though, is based on the forecast and the predictions and the skills of the people who do it. If they get it wrong, it can be very expensive, but if they get it right, then it can be very lucrative. Look at the airlines for an example of this. The airlines recently are being caught out by the recent drop in fuel prices. They didn't expect it. They bought a lot of their funds and currency a while back when they thought that the price of fuel would continue to go up, so they bought their fuel in advance, hedging. However, the price of fuel has started to drop. They didn't foresee this happening, and now they've paid over the odds for their fuel. But clearly all they'll do now is they'll hedge and spend more money buying the fuel for the future months and years ahead. But that is the policy, hedging, spreading your risks. You don't really need to know that for your A-level business studies. However, it's definitely a topic that may come up in your economics course, and it's always a good topic to understand as well. Okay, that's it. You should have an understanding of the exchange rates and how they impact on different organisations. You should also be aware of the impact that the interest rates have on the exchange rates. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at BeeBusinessBee and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also tweet me any areas of business you want me to cover in the future. Don't forget to check out my website. It's beebusinessbee.co.uk.